Middle East. How is all over the region? Is it subsidized or is it coming the more push from EV side from the OEMs?
So
Who are the major influencers?
completely different markets. So if you go to Middle East, for example, you see markets developed 10 years ago, like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, where the first installations came up. But they said, okay, 22 kilowatts, something like that must be enough, or 100 kilowatt is the maximum what you're allowed to install there. Nowadays it's changing because there are some markets, I would say, speeding up the business, mainly driven by own EV production lines.
Okay.
So as you maybe heard or you know as well that in Saudi Arabia, for example, they have 4 plants being built right now. Lucid, Ceer, joint venture of Foxconn, BMW,
Okay.
as well as Hyundai Kia is building a plant there, and also BYD is going there, also with a battery fabrication. And
Wow.
so you see that there is, how I say, pressure on the market, and so you see even that in Dubai is moving a little bit more than 10 years ago. So they
Okay.
also think about and talk about high power charging and fast charging, even in an, how I say, quite urban area where okay, if I drive with my car to Abu Dhabi, this is 150 kilometers and back, maybe my car can reach it, so that's fine. But anyway, heat and temperatures, so you need a charger, which is exactly in the middle between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. A charger park being built years ago, but this is not enough, say it like this.
Okay.
If you talk about long haul, so we saw some trips from Riyadh, for example, with an electric car to Abu Dhabi. So this is a challenge what the guys are doing right now. And this is the same how we started in Europe as well, but on a different way. They come with the commercial vehicles because Saudi government has bought 25,000 cars from Lucid to bring them in the market.
Okay.
And they are commercial, or how I say, governmental driven. So this is different than, you come with a Tesla imported from Germany or from Europe, and then you bring the car into the market, then you have a different approach. You do not, how to say, make the money with the car, or you do not earn the money. So it's always a question of monetization at the end of the day.
So
If you have the need to, how to say, be present with your car somewhere, delivery cars or whatever, or medical cars for elderly people. So this is the case where you make money with, and so you need infrastructure on your own. Otherwise you will fail if you only focus on public charging. So you see the development is quite different, and each market develops a little bit, how to say, more or less without funding or subsidies, and on the other side, very creative in some markets.
Okay, so regulations kind of play a role, but also now the pressure is coming from the companies, the new entrants. They are already bringing, you mentioned BYD. So if they are going to enter the market, it's already putting the signal, okay, we might need to change the strategy, and that puts pressure on OEMs.
You see some test markets, especially in Middle East and Asia, where BYD and the Chinese OEMs are coming up, and they are, how to say, testing with different car types. So there's an entry level. This is a cheap and awful, say it like this. And they offer this for 20k euros, something like that. And there's a luxury version, and they sell it for 67, 65,000 K.
Yeah.
Same model, but different, even a different setup, and other battery sizes and so on. So you see that, I would say, especially Middle East is a test mark for Chinese. Not for Europeans. They are not coming that extreme, but they are pushing into the market because, as you know, from the global perspective right now, some markets are closed, not really open for European car makers. On the other side, you have the Chinese, which are also struggling on selling cars to for example, US right now,
Exactly.
tax topics and so on.
Exactly.
So you see that there are some game changers or some screws you have to take a look at, turning right or left. So that's the way how the market is acting at the moment.